Welcome to the Rimworld mod rundown. We'll be taking a quick look at what you can expect to see from ReGrowth Core. For starters, you'll need to own the additional workshop content, vanilla expanded framework, and harmony. Whilst additional Rimworld DLC is not required to use ReGrowth, it does have interaction with all of the official content. A nice new core mod to cover that enhances the vanilla experience without drastically pulling away from the base game's balance or overall Rimworld feel and aesthetic. Whilst covering ReGrowth, I'll be using the Re-Textures pack that they have out too. That mod isn't really big enough to justify its own rundown, so it's worth mentioning up at the top. If you like the look of the new animals, plants, rocks and globe, these additions come from ReGrowth Re-Textures, and I would highly recommend using it to update the old vanilla models so they tie in with the new content that ReGrowth mods add. So what does ReGrowth Core actually add? At the time of recording, you'll get a handful of new animals, a couple of new plants, a new wall type, a lot of new texture and graphical options, new weather types and effects, a new recreation type, the ability to make camp on the world map, a new biome, better faction spawn generation, and some quality of life options that are up to you if you decide you want to use or not. Breaking down this mod shouldn't be too hard, as everything has its own place and there's not too much overlap. To start, you'll get the new animals of a kiwi bird, a rabbit, a hemalope, and a neutralope. The kiwi bird's a new animal that you can raise for its eggs, producing around 6 a year. With a very low handling skill required and costing next to nothing, they're a nice cheap option to have around for a little bit of extra nutrition without inflating the raid size because of your large colony wealth. Strange to think that these animals are green inside and full of seeds. The rabbit is exactly the same as a hare or snow hare, it just looks fluffier. It also makes more sense for it to appear in certain biomes. The hemalope is a handy source of hemogen packs, although some would say that if you're milking blood from an animal, maybe you're doing it wrong. Functioning like a boomalope but costing around twice as much, this produces a few packs every 3 days, giving you easy access to food for sanguiphages or a reliable source of transfusion material for your hospital. The neutralope works the same, only for Nutramine, with a slower production rate of 15 units every 6 days, given the expensive nature of this product. These are near essential to successfully run a vanilla expanded android colony, and also come in highly useful for a colony that makes most of their money by selling chems, giving you reliable access to make go juice, wake up, penoxycyllin, or to upgrade your herbal meds into actual medicine. Despite the highly valuable commodity they produce, they sit between a boomalope and a hemalope, costing around 1.5 times as much wealth as a boomalope would to keep around. So they're the new animals. Next up, you've got a couple of new growable options. In the research tree for regrowth, you have mushroom cultivation and berry cultivation. Mushroom will unlock you Nutrifungus, and despite showing timber shrooms, unfortunately offers you no way of planting them manually, so you'll still want an open room with fungal gravel flooring to let them spawn naturally. Berry cultivation allows you to plant berries, raspberries and strawberries. In base game, your colonists can only plant strawberries and have to harvest normal berry bushes on the map, so this gives you access to 3 choices that will likely fit the biome much better in terms of climate. The benefit of all berry bushes is that there's no mood penalty when the fruit is eaten raw, but the 3 bushes differ slightly in how they provide the tasty treats. All of them require a skill of 5 in planting to be sown. The strawberry plant is harvested in its entirety when fully grown, with a yield of 8 that takes 4.6 days to grow. Taking into account that plants are only growing when in 50% or more light, we'll say that that takes around 9 days. Berry bushes, on the other hand, take 5 days to grow, with that same yield of 8. So again, we'll say 10 days accounting for daylight hours. But when a berry bush is harvested, instead of it being totally removed, it's instead knocked back to around 30% growth, meaning it needs less time to produce fruit again, 7 days or so.
7 days? Oh my god, I'm gonna die next Monday?
Yes. No, wait, Monday. That would be 7 business days. This is 7 days starting now.
Their lifespan is 40 days, so in that time you should be able to squeeze in about 5 harvests, provided your pawns are on top of harvesting the day that they're hitting 100% grown. The raspberry bush functions like the berry bush, only taking 4 days, so 8 in daylight, to fully grow. It still has a yield of 8, but its lifespan is shorter, so you'll be really struggling to get a full 5 harvests out of them. You're far more likely to get 4 and then have it die around 85 to 90% of the way into its 5th growth. Obviously, none of this is taking into account fertility sensitivity, which is by far the highest on strawberries, so they're going to thrive in fertile soil, whereas the other 2 bushes will shrug and just do their thing, even in poor quality soil. It gives you a few nice options, and you'll also get to see wild raspberry bushes in certain biomes too, adding a splash of colour to the landscape. The new wall option is a hedge. Understandably, it's incapable of holding up a roof.
Oh, okay.
But it makes for a fantastic source of outdoor beauty and gives you options besides fences to pen in animals. Very handy to make sure pawns stick to pathing as well when navigating outdoor areas of your base. It'll stop them from trying to take shortcuts and walking dirt all over your floor. Next up, you've got some graphical tweaks to play around with. The only one that impacts the game balance is the increase to vanilla plant density. This will see the land populated with more grass, shrubs, bushes and trees, which gives you much easier access to wood. But let's be honest, if the thing that you're getting more of is wood, that isn't exactly throwing balance out of the window. You can disable the increased plant density from the mod options if you dislike the clutter, or if you find that extra trees to chop is just too easy. Next is autumn actually having an effect on trees. Leaves are now correctly shed and create debris on the ground, before the tree goes fully dormant over winter. This is provided you're living in a biome with a seasonal cycle anyway. Then you've got the option of perspective trees, which goes a long way in making the world behave more naturally. With pawns and items no longer clipping over the tops of trees, some players may be unhappy with this as it can occasionally obscure resources or targets. Others will be happy that the world now looks significantly more immersive. If you're using other mods in the ReGrowth series, you'll find that hot springs can have fog and lava has a glow. We'll cover this with the associated biomes eventually. For now, we've got the options of disabling those settings in the mod page. You may notice that marshes also look a little more active with regrowth enabled, as they now have a similar fluid texture to a lake. Perspective ores is the next major change, which incorporates the surrounding stone into the texture for the mineable material. For some, this is literally a living nightmare. I know how many players use the colorblind materials mod to make it easier to find things when they quickly scan the map for resources, with perspective ores going the entirely opposite direction and actively trying to hide these resources from you. Thankfully, with the update to 1.5, remember that you can now simply hit the Z key and search for steel or machinery to locate any veins in the world, so you can have something that looks natural and is still easy to find. Next up, weather options. Everything with regrowth weather is going a long way to make things less predictable, adding in overcast, breezy, drizzle, monsoon, fog storm, foggy snow, blizzard, foggy sandstorm, sandstorm and hard sandstorm weather types. If you dislike any of these, they can be disabled individually in the options menu, giving you a great degree of flexibility. So if another mod that you're using already added in blizzards for example, now you won't have overlapping weather that might have a couple of different effects. Very nice. With these you might also see dust devils appear and travel around your map. These will cause small cuts and bruises if any pawns happen to be clipped by them, but they're nowhere near as dangerous as tornadoes. A new recreation type for regrowth is bathing, something unfamiliar to some Rimworld players.
He's out of line, but he's right.
You can now designate bathing areas that pawns will go and use to wash their troubles away. Just try to make sure that it isn't too far from the base. The last thing you want is pawns crossing half of the map to take a dip, only to be mauled by a bear on the way home. The ability to make camp is up next, and this is huge. You can now enter a small map on any open tile while traversing the world. This allows you to scavenge or hunt for food, set up a makeshift shelter whilst waiting for a threat on the home tile to pass before returning, or tend to a medical emergency, like needing to amputate an infected limb that is falling far behind on its immunity. Not only that, whilst the tile will appear to be cleared on the world map when you pack up and leave, if you return to that same spot within a few days and camp there again, all of your structures and items still exist, allowing you to quickly make stops on your way to destinations as you have an established holdover. I'm sure there are all kinds of strange interactions that you can use these camps for, and probably quite a few cheeky wealth hiding options too, making sure your main colony isn't a magnet for huge raids. You can change how long these camps are retained in the mod options page. Just remember, it'll be cluttering up your memory in the background whilst you aren't using it, so you probably don't want these things hanging around forever. The biome introduced with the Regrowth core is grasslands. They behave similarly to tundra, so you're unlikely to have a lot of trees on these tiles. Whereas the tundra is typically brown, a little boggy, and quite cool throughout the year, the grasslands have a touch more green, are more forgiving in their temperature, and have cleaner waters with fertile soil around them. Tribals might have a tricky start here as they have to fight for their early resources, but once you've got a tree plantation up and running, everything's nice and breezy. Whilst we're looking at places to land and the new biome, you may have noticed that factions seem slightly more grouped up in Regrowth. This is because of the new faction placement settings. Tribes no longer try and settle in -16-degree tiles, or in the middle of a 40-degree desert. It pulls faction bases closer together in an area that makes sense for them to have built a colony. After all, I think we all agree that a criminal gang may have travelled to the arse end of nowhere to set up their drug ring. They're less likely to be hassled by travellers, and they'll have technology to keep themselves warm and fed in those locations, as well as the supplies and provisions to have even been able to make that trip in the first place. But how the hell did a nudist tribe manage to walk 28 tiles of pure ice sheet only to stake their claim on a spot of land that has no trees, animals, or even soil? Is baffling.
Got a little dippy going too fast out here.
Especially when you raid targets like that and they all die from hypothermia waiting for you to attack. So now your world is going to make some kind of sense, as much as things can in Rimworld anyway. Finally, you've got your quality of life choices. You can make anima, Garanlan, pollux, or harbinger trees replantable if you wish, allowing you to build without upsetting the anima tree or have corpse disposal right next to your base. Regrowth also includes realistic filth removal, so blood, crap, and any debris that's small enough to be washed away from outdoor surfaces will start to disappear when it rains, saving your pawns the job of sweeping the lawn. And that's about it for Regrowth Core. Nothing mind-blowing or overpowered, just a bit of beauty added to the game with a dash of logic thrown in for good measure. I'll be covering the biome overhauls and the new biomes released for Regrowth as mini rundowns on weeks when I've got huge projects to do, as they're nice quick videos to make, and the quality of these mods is so high that they do deserve a little love. The art style is perfect, and there isn't anything they add that's too wacky or out of step with the main Rimworld concept. Thanks for watching, folks. If you have any mods you'd like to see a full breakdown for, or suggestions of mods you'd like to see covered, feel free to leave them in the comments, I might get around to them. I'll be back again soon with another Rimworld mod rundown. Wherever you are in the world, enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening. Take care.